Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Shane, and I'm going to be talking about incorporating music into special education. My story started 4 years ago. I was working in a group home, and I noticed that all my guys really liked music. One of them even had his own dance that he'd perform at the end of the day when we were brushing his teeth. But they had few opportunities to actually participate in music other than just passively listening to it on the radio or watching it on TV. So I set out to change that. And I started volunteering at a couple group homes, playing guitar. I built up a repertoire over the years and found out what they like and how to get them to participate with instruments like rattles and shakers and bringing in drums for them to play and getting them to sing along to the songs. And we had a great time. But I realized that hitting these small groups just wasn't big enough. So I wanted to scale up. When I was approaching graduation, I realized maybe I could bring this to special education. So I applied with the St. Cloud School District, got a job as a special ed para, and a year later, I was doing just what I set out to do. I was incorporating music into special education. So I started bringing my guitar in on Fridays last few months of the year, and I started playing with small groups of special ed students. And the same thing I was doing at the group homes, but the crowds are a little bit bigger, and I was hitting a different population. I had one boy in particular who would always ask me, "Did you bring your guitar today?" And I said, "Were you in class this week?" So that actually became his reinforcer. Going to class so that he could earn time with me on Fridays, and sometimes he lost out. So I know it worked because his attendance improved greatly at the end of the year because he wanted that music time with me. He wanted the opportunity to get to tune my guitar and help me set it up and get some time to play on it. It was a great motivational tool. Next story, I was working at a high school last year, and I brought my guitar in one Friday in September. I played "Let It Go, Let It Go, I am one with the wind and the sky, let it go." And so one of the girls became attached to me after that because she liked Frozen and Disney songs, and I demonstrated that I understand the students enough to want to play songs that they're into. So the rest of the year we had a great rapport. She's someone who has some trouble moving on sometimes from one setting to another, like getting off the bus and going to the building. So I was able to use that rapport that I built with her that one day for the rest of the year to get her to move on in some tough spots during the year. So, for example, if she was stuck on the bus, I'd say, "Hey, do you want to walk with me?" And I use my nonverbals and I start walking away and she follows. So, music can be used as a motivational tool and a rapport building tool in special education. My last story is about incorporating practices from music therapy. I worked with a kid with autism who had moderate intellectual disability. And he's someone who just had trouble even sitting down. His compliance was so low, he couldn't even sit for 15 seconds. So I used music as a therapy tool to get him to just comply with some simple directions. Before I would start my instructional time with him, I would pull up YouTube and put a bunch of music videos on the screen, and I'd have him point at one, and that would be the music that he picked for that time. And the moment he sat down in the chair, I started playing the music on the computer. And then I tried to get him to work. And then maybe about 15 seconds later, he'd stand up and I'd stop it. And then I'd use my nonverbals to transition him back into the chair. And the moment he was back on the chair, play the music. So that's what I did all year. And I went from seconds to several minutes sitting in a chair doing work. And then my coworker was a genius and brought in this little music box, one of those wind-up ones, and I started using that to get him to stay on task while he was sitting. So he was already sitting, he was getting his YouTube music, but then when he had his hands on his puzzle or whatever he was assembling, then I'm winding up that music box, and then when he stops working, stop it, and then keep going once he's doing the right thing. So it was a way to teach him what actions were correct and what actions were incorrect. So that's how I incorporated music therapy practices into special education instruction. So I really think that as a special education teacher, you can really incorporate music into your instruction because it can help with motivation, building rapport, and it can utilize some tricks from music therapy. And finally, I want to talk about my dream, which is to start an adapted music class. And this would be something where you can actually make a meaningful instruction in music for kids in special education, because by and large, music is over for a lot of these kids in middle school because band and orchestra becomes too difficult and it weeds out most of them. Even kids with learning disabilities who have trouble reading, a lot of them have trouble just reading the notation for music. So a lot of these kids miss out on music, and that's the end. And that's too bad, because music has so many positive effects in people's lives in a lot of areas that people in special education struggle with. So I think that they shouldn't miss out on meaningful instruction and participation in music. So what I want to do with my career is create an adapted music program. That's kind of what I've been about for the last few years. Well, anyways, thank you for listening to my talk on incorporating music into special education. Keep rocking on. Bye.